Part 2. I guess this is kind of a longer lecture than I'd planned, but isn't that always the case with us professors? We just like to talk. So I wanted to talk about Russell Edson because he is such an important part of the prose poem. He has been writing prose poems since the early 60s, and he more than any other poet probably in the history of poetry has just devoted himself to prose, to the form of the poem written in prose, and he's very influential, and he's also really quite, he's sort of flown under the radar. He doesn't come up on sort of list of great contemporary American poets like Billy Collins or Robert Pinsky or Robert Haas, Louise Gluck, Harriet Mullen. He's never sort of on those sort of list of great American contemporary poets. But he's very influential, and all of his poems sort of they really are just sort of nightmares, little story nightmares. And there's a lot of animals who are characters. There's apes. There's a lot of apes in his poems. He's really using the joke. He's sort of borrowing the joke and making it into a form to sort of work out a poem in. So the way a joke works is that, you have the sort of setup, and you have these two entities that are either seemingly connected or seemingly disconnected, right? And then when you get to the punchline, you figure out that those two things that seemed like they were disconnected are actually connected, or vice versa. Those two things that really seem disconnected, actually they're quite connected. So that's kind of basically how a joke works. And that's a very quick and conventional way of thinking about the joke, but we laugh because we are surprised that two things that seemed incongruous are actually congruous, or two things that seemed congruous are actually couldn't be more different. And so you can kind of see that Russell Edson's pieces are using that sort of joke form, and yet then you get to what seems to be like a punchline, and that is immediately dissolved. So there's no sense that anything is connected or disconnected. Sometimes his prose poems feel like jokes that just don't have a punchline, or he purposely seems to ruin the punchline. But I think he's always had the joke in mind when he writes his prose poems, and hopefully you'll see that in the contemporary prose poems handout. All right, I think that's all I have for you. We're spending more time on prose poetry because for me it's seemingly indefinite, and it's a really lively and relevant and contemporary form. There are a ton of poets writing right now in prose. And so people are really taking it seriously. So I just want to kind of chip away at it. The thing that you can kind of take away from this week's video lecture is just that the sentence tends to cloak, but not cover up, but just slightly cloak the poetics that a line doesn't. A line doesn't necessarily cloak anything. It's just all there. The sound, the rhythm, the emphasis on image and metaphor, right? Line endings do all of that stuff. The sentence depends on the syntax of the form of the sentence to really draw the reader's attention to sound and image and metaphor. All right. Have a good week 7, people.